Hi there, welcome to Sporting Lives with me, Jonathan Doidge. This is episode 15, part 2 with Richard Mallers. This was a great episode to record with a man who's played rugby league at the very highest level and for several top clubs. Lots to say, and let's launch straight back in there then with a look at his time at Leeds Rhinos and that glorious year of 2004. And you mentioned, going into a successful season. I mean, just even thinking about that from the press box gives me goosebumps still. I'll never forget the Old Trafford night where it all happened, and Mr. Kaplan and I, everybody in the box knew that we were the sort of, well, obviously Pete Smith as well, the three blue and amber lovers, and I remember, not lovers in that sense, but lovers of the club, I should say, to clarify that. When it all happened and when the final hooter went, Phil kind of 2 or 3 rows below me, turning around and looking up and just kind of giving a nod and a little fist clench.
It was special.
It was a brilliant night, but the build up to that, I mean, the season itself, you hit the ground running, beating the Broncos' first game, and then you just League Leaders Shield and some amazing rugby league. Ali Lawatiti signed that year. Yeah,
he signed that year, and he made his debut at Bradford away. I remember it like he was classed as a Michael Jordan of rugby league, and I think, we had this core 80% of these young Leeds lads or come through the academy. But then we had Ali Lawatiti, Marcus Bai, Chris McKenna, Matt Adamson, who didn't play in the grand final but was part of the squad, Dave Ferner. When you look at today, they were absolute superstars. And what they were as well, they were unbelievable professionals. Great people, great professionals, and a great influence over that group. But it gives me, I've got a bit of a goosebumps now. So, if you remember back to them nights, Eddie, Friday night, Leeds and Bradford rival, but regardless of whoever we played on a Friday night, I think because Leeds United had just been relegated or were just on the verge, so we got a lot of converted football fans, so it was 16 to 18 to 20,000 every single Friday night, and some of the rugby we played, and I'd sit and argue with anybody that 2004 and 5 season. I don't think there's been rugby played like that in Super League before or since. We were just unbelievable, and it culminated in the grand final.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that season. You've beaten Bradford 3 times in the league itself in front of massive crowds because they were, as you alluded to, a special side themselves. And then you come to the playoffs, and first up, bang, who are you playing? Bradford.
At home.
And you lose that game. Yeah. And you could be forgiven. You could forgive any Leeds fan who's seen it all over the last 30 years, 32 years.
Here we go again.
Big game. Here we go again. Soft underbelly.
Yeah.
What do you recall of that one?
Yeah, well, I think, it was, the rivalry was because we'd been the whipping boys pre ourselves coming in, and then we'd beaten them 3 times. There was a real dislike amongst the players. There really was. There was rivalries all over. Barry McDermott, Stuart Field, and is one. But there were just, there were a lot of. And
who else?
Well, I used to wind Stuart Fielding up. I was gobby. I was all mouth, couldn't fight. Who else was Carl Pratt was in there because he'd been released from Leeds. He was a little fiery little character, but it was more the right, like Leon Price was a bit of an abrasive character and liked a bit of a chirp as well. Then you threw Yeston Harris in the mix, who he was like my dad. He was all our hero, but it turned into like Leeds hated him, the fans. But then that manifested it into us. So every time we got ball, everyone wanted to knock 10 bells out of him. But he's a great fella, it was just that time. But going back to that playoff game, I remember they were like, the name 20,000, there must have been 25,000 in there.
21,225 was the official attendance.
There were more, it was packed. Red Hot game, Red Hot Day, sorry. And Yeah, and we got beat, and but even though we got beat, I remember just thinking, and I remember Tony being unbelievably calm. Just, well, it's fine. We'll just beat Wigan next week, and away we go. Which I think it shows a resolve. I can understand the 21,000 and all the heartache of 32 years doubting, but this belief in this group was just that strong. It was like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, and so you go and you thrash Wigan the following week. You get to Old Trafford. We've all been there in '98 when Wigan won that first grand final. Everybody's still really nervous. Can it actually happen? They've played the best team in the competition. They've won the League Leaders Shield. They've wiped the floor with most teams. They've had a bit of a wobble. They're back on track. It's the big night. Can they finally do this with a bunch of young kids, effectively, in the side, plus those top draw players?
Especially when you compare it to Bradford's side.
Yeah. And you think about some of the tries that you've seen throughout Leeds' history, and certainly in the Super League era, there's been some fantastic tries at various grounds, loads of them at Headingley, but the two that stick out most have been at Old Trafford. One by Rob Burrow
against St Helens,
and one by Danny Maguire.
Yeah.
What did that feel like in that last few minutes when he?
Well, I cried. Just before I move on to that one, I think there's a real important story leading up to the grand final, and it's one of my running songs. This. I'll get back to your original question. So I got nominated for Young Player of the Year. Danny Maguire got nominated for Man of Steel, and Tony Smith got nominated for Coach of the Year. So we all went. Leeds hired so we're all black tie, and they hired a fancy coach to take us to a fancy hotel in Manchester, and so we're all sat round. And bearing in mind we'd been the best side by a country mile, you could argue I'd beat best young player, Danny being Man of Steel, top try scorer, and you can certainly argue Tony being best coach. And then, so we're having the meal, and then out of nowhere, Heather Small from M People comes out and a cappella starts singing "Search for the Hero Inside Yourself," and I'm like sat there like choked up. It was just unbelievable. And so I play it, it's just a real, you listen to the words, you'll know what I mean. So she sang that, we ate our meal. So then first up is, I don't know, top try scorer, which Danny won. Second up, top tackler. And then goes to the main awards. Young Player of the Year is Sean Briscoe. So everyone's like, Sean, fair enough, he's a good player. Moved on. Head Coach of the Year is, I can't remember it wasn't Tony Smith. It might have been, I can't remember who it was. Then the main event, Man of Steel, Andy Farrell. So we're like, not that we were that bothered by the Tony, so we got back on the bus, and I thought, well, one of us, between the three of us, one of us should have won something, in my opinion. And I'm not saying who should have. Tony probably should have won Man of Steel, head coach. You could argue about the rest, it's all subjective. But Tony got back on the bus and he said, "Don't worry, we'll have our night. It's not about individuals, we'll have our night at Old Trafford as a team." And it always sticks to me. And then we were warming up, and Heather Small sang that again. And we all looked at each other, me and Danny, because we were there, looked at each other, were like, that's our night. And then the game, it chucked it down. I remember Paul Deakin bombing me to death for the first 20 minutes. I'm thinking, please stop this. But I've managed to caught everyone. And then Robbie Paul infamously drops a ball, and then Danny scores that try. And just the sheer relief that we knew we'd won. I cry we just knew we'd won. It was just amazing. Just memories that you just stay with you for a lifetime.
And once you know you can do it, you can never undo that. You know that you're a champion, that any time you step out there in any game now, and particularly in a big game, you know that you're capable of doing that. Absolutely. And that's got to be a massive thing.
Yeah, and I think
to get over that.
Yeah, and I think, to get over because let's not forget as well, we'd been reminded of the history of, it'd been so long, it'd been
32 years.
32 years, but we'd been reminded of that in the, when we got beat by Bradford in the playoff game, in the lead up to the Wigan game, in the week lead up to, so we were very well aware of that. Even though it didn't really matter to us, like 32 years, that's not our time. This is our time. But once you actually cross that and you actually pick that trophy up and you are a champion and you've wrote your name in history books, it does cement, your confidence of what you're doing. And then that followed on to the next season when we played in the World Club Challenge,
which I was just going to mention. Yeah, I mean that night at Ellen Road,
that was special. That was special.
It was a cricket score for both sides, wasn't it? There were points aplenty. I mean, talk about entertainment levels, quality of the game. It was just a sensational night, and I think it was a night that Leeds fans probably, having watched Wigan have a go and win it win it away as well, Saints have a go, Bradford. Yeah, it's never going to happen to us.
No, but if you think as well, it was sold out at Ellen Road, which is unbelievable. And you're playing against the best of the best, and you're thinking, well, can we do it? And we absolutely battered them in the first half. You talk about Danny's trying. In the grand final, the try he scored is arguably, I think that's the best try he's ever scored in that first half at Ellen Road. How he scored that is still to this day amazes me. Probably, well, I won't give you too much praise because he scored that world in the 2003 Challenge Cup semi-final, but similar to that. But we absolutely battered them in the first half, and they came back. In the second half, it was, like you say, it was a cricket score, but just to be classed as world champions in a, again, as Leeds lads, playing at Ellen Road, we all supported Leeds, we all went and watched Leeds. I scored at the Cop End, got my nose bust for the pleasure. But yeah, just a special time to be involved in the club.
It was a great night, and obviously they managed to, as a club, go on and repeat that and played in a few more with varying degrees of success. But to stick that on your CV, fantastic. And then, and I want to come to the Warringtons and the Cassies and the Wakeys. We need to get onto that, but I just want to look at 05 in particular, because as a season, now you've discovered the winning touch. You've won those 2 trophies. We've won those 3 trophies that, if we include the League Leaders Shield, and why shouldn't we? It's a very, very important trophy. 05, you hit the ground running. I remember speaking to Danny Maggs about this, and he just said we sort of trained the house down during the winter. Everybody's full of it. Yeah. We hit the ground running, and it was almost like we were a racehorse that had gone off in front so far. We just we were a bit legless when it came to the vital part of the season. Losing the Challenge Cup final
and the grand final,
and that kind of pulls the rug out from under your feet, and then things are all over the place up to the grand final.
Yeah, so and Danny's right. Tony being Tony, he said, well, we need to redouble our efforts. We can't just I remember the pre-season and the training. It was horrible. Like, it was hard the first year to come, but quite rightly, he upped the ante because he didn't want us to get complacent because we were still young. And you can see, looking back now you mature, and you can reflect. And I'll stand by this. We played, barring the final, but in regular season rugby, we probably played better rugby in 2005 than we did in 04. But you judge by trophies. Start with the Challenge Cup final. We were responsible because we played, but I think Tony's got to take some responsibility on that. He should have pulled Keith Senior out. Keith Senior won't fit. Keith's got to take some responsibility on that. He didn't train all week. We needed Barry to play. He should have played Barry McDermott against them Hull forwards. It was always going to be a war of attrition against them Hull forwards. We'd blow them away in the backs, but we needed Baz to play. So that's I think. In all honesty, yes, whatever team you put out, you're accountable. But I think if people had the time again, I think, Keith didn't train all week. He had it because we played Bradford the week before, and Joe Vagana, I was next to him. It was horrible. But then Keith didn't train all week, And then we trained, where the Millennium Stadium is in the Cardiff Arms Park behind it. And he did like a couple of laps up and down a touchline, and that was it. And I'm like, I roomed with Danny. I'm like, he's not right. But Tony didn't pull him out and Keith didn't pull himself out, whichever way you want to blame it, it was the wrong thing to do. And they just bashed us. But we managed to get away back in it. I kicked the ball across, Marcus By scored, and then Paul Cutt scored in the, which was heartbreaking. But looking back, what a great final. Like, yeah, I'm disappointed to lose. I'd have loved to have won a Challenge Cup for Leeds. But my memories of that game was, it was it was magical. 80-odd thousand at the Millennium Stadium, Hull fans, Leeds fans. Yeah, we come out the wrong side of the result. And then I think after that, Jonathan, I think it knocked the wind out of our sails a little bit. I think it, I think we went on to win and get to the grand final, and we probably had opportunities in the grand final, but I just think it took that much out of us, the Challenge Cup, emotionally. And probably like you say, like we'd done, I think we'd probably done too much too soon, and we just faded.
So it's a great season in many ways, but not in the trophy cabinet, with the exception, of course, of the World Club Challenge that kicks it all off. 2006, you struggled with that knee injury, was it in 06?
Yeah.
And the announcement that you're on your way to Gold Coast. Titans.
Yeah.
Because there was some denials that you were going there. Was that a done deal before the knee, or did that come on the back of it?
No. So I were lucky enough to get picked for England in that off season, and what the story behind the Gold Coast was, Michael Searle was the founder and CEO of the Gold Coast, and John Cartwright was the head coach. They came over and watched the entire 2005 playoff series, and they wanted to sign a prop forward, an English prop forward, a English winger, and a young prospect back. So they went for Stuart Field and didn't get Stuart Field, and they signed Brian Carney, and they come after me. And even though we didn't win the grand final, I had a really good playoff series and played really well in the grand final. Then I played for England, and then at the start of 06, sort of got in negotiations with Leeds. Then Gold Coast made it really firm, got in touch with my agent at the time and said we want him to come, and sent like the DVD, and like you can imagine, like I think I was 20.
The dream.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to go. I remember sitting with my dad. I said, Dad, I'm with my best mates. We're going to create a dynasty here. And he said, well, you've won a grand final. And he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I flew out to Spain. I said to Tony, I just need some time to have a think. And he said, look, you do what you want to do. He said, but I'm telling you now. He said, this was before like your Gaz Ellis's went and Burgesses, and I think there'd only been Moz, and before, the influx that we see now. And he said, you'll get to, call it my age now, you'll get to 37. And he said, you'll always regret it. He said, you can always come back. He said, but there's not many NRL teams come over for players. You need, give it a think. But he said, that's... So I thought, well, you could be living in worse places in the world, and it'd be great for your CV, and what a great life experience. And I think, without getting too philosophical and sad, I had no family anyway. My mum had gone, my dad were in Spain, and I'd met my partner. I was like, well, what? Let's go see the world. So I told Tony. Tony and Gary were great. Understood why. I told them, about I wanted to go see the world, and then, and I can tell this now. So at the time, Chris McKenna and Chris Feather signed for Bradford, and Steve McNamara was the coach. And I'd never signed for Bradford in a million years, the rivalry. But Chris McKenna, I was really good friends with Chris McKenna, and he lived in opposite the village, the housing estate. We used to call it Ramsey Street. So all the Aussies lived there. So I thought, I'm just going to humour it. I just wanted to see what I was worth. So he said, because Leeds had offered me a contract, I'd already agreed to go to the Gold Coast. And I thought, well, I just wonder what I'm worth on the open market. So he said he wants to meet, will he come round to ours? He wants to have a cup of tea with you. So I went and humoured him, and he offered me an absolute fortune. An absolute fortune. 5-year deal. Life-changing money. And I'm like, I can't do it because I'm a Leeds lad and because of the rivalry. And so I said I'd think about it, and I politely declined. And I'm glad of it. You know, it wasn't about the money. I couldn't have done it. It was life-changing money, and I'd have been set for life. Not set for life, but I'd have been well on my way. But being the Leeds heartstrings, I knocked it back. And then, as sod's law has it, Leeds and Gold Coast agreed to announce it on the Monday that I was leaving, and then we played Hull on the Friday night, and I did my cruise ship. So that was the last game I played for Leeds.
Yeah, and after all of that, I bet the deal was nothing like as good as that when you went back to play for Bradford while you were part-time at the end of your career.
No,
he said
nothing
with his
like
tongue firmly in his cheek.
No. I tell you what. To be fair, I got a decent deal out of Steve Ferris out of that. I did all right, but yeah, nothing like it was.
So, I mean, Gold Coast on the field, half a dozen matches during the season.
Yeah, it was hard, mate. So the brilliant club, unbelievable place to live. They couldn't have done anything more for us as a family to settle in. I'm still really close with Michael Searle, speak to him regularly. John Cartwright, made some friends for life, lived in an unbelievable place. Danny and his wife came and stayed, the family came and stayed. And then, so I went over with my left cruise ship, still in rehab, managed to get fit. And I played 4 games in the right centre for Bailey Bears and loved it. Like, we were like playing for East Leeds Park footy. And then Preston Campbell got injured, and then John Cartwright said, right, you're making your debut. And I think I played 6 or 7 games. And anyone who has had a cruise ship knows it's not a 12, they say 9 to 12, it's not. It's a 2-year injury before you get in fully fit. But I just started to get some decent form, and then we were playing at Leichhardt Oval. Ironically, played my best half of footy I'd played, and then innocuous, just like my left one. Winger caught the ball, Matt Peterson caught the ball, got a quick play of the ball. I picked it up, marker came out, I stepped off my right foot, bang, gone, just knew straight away. So I did 2 ACLs in 17 months.
And that's got to be a massive setback in career
terms. I was heartbroken.
Yeah,
I was heartbroken. So I'd gone on this upward. I'd won everything. I'd been spoken about international honours. I'd played in the NRL, and I remember because I knew how hard it was to get back from my first ACL, knowing what the second one. Then I'm thinking, well, who's going to want me at? You know, I'm damaged goods here. I remember sat in Leichhardt Oval, absolutely floods of tears, and pretty much just knew that I thought it was over. I genuinely thought it was over. So I managed to get the surgery. The club were brilliant and rehabbed me back. And what I will say, just before we move on to anything else, out of everything I've achieved, and I'm sure we'll touch on the cups and stuff, out of everything I've achieved in my career, the proudest thing I'm the most proud of is managing to get back and have 7 or 8 years at top level after them ACLs, because it's finished, you know, it's finished a lot of people, and I'm more proud than anything I've ever done in the game, more proud than any medal or representing England getting back from them.
Well, it's tremendous testimony, not only to your physical abilities to be able to actually do the physical work to get yourself back there, but the worst test, the toughest test there has got to be mentally.
Oh, mate, yeah. It was because, like I said to you, everything, you know, when you're young, you think you're 6 foot tall and bulletproof, and especially when you've captained England schoolboys, Yorkshire, everything you've done since you're 13 years old has been, like we've summarised in all this time, has all been positive. There's never been a negative thing by losing my mum. But from a professional point of view, everything's gone.
And so if everything's gone and you think you're all washed up or worse to that effect, a little club called Wigan suddenly appear on the horizon.
Yeah. So I was on holiday in Noosa, and a phone rang, and to say I'd had a few beers would be an understatement. And it was Brian Noble, the world's best salesman. So thought it was winding me up. So I told him to do one. Then phone rang again, and I realised it wasn't hobby. And I thought I better answer. He's Wigan and Great Britain coach at the time. And he said, unfortunately, Michael Withers I think he'd had to retire because of his knee. And he said, will he come and play for us? He said, you'll have to go get a medical and this and other. I played for peanuts. But if you play so many games in your first year, you'll get your market value year after. And I weighed it all up, and I thought, well, you're not going to play now. And you're damaged goods, because I'm under no illusions, mate. There were 20 of me, as talented as me. You're just a conveyor belt in and out. So I weighed it up, and I thought, well, you can go home. What you're going to do? You could kick about and play in the Queensland Cup for 12 months, and then your market value is going to be, and it's Wigan. It's not with Featherstone, no disrespect to Featherstone, but you know what I mean. It wasn't a championship side; it was a big club. And I went there, and I was absolutely terrible. Coming back off, I played. The worst thing Nobby did, he kept playing me, but I just had no confidence in my body. Wigan fans still to this day give me stick, rightly so. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I was as diligent as a professional as everybody, but I was like a scared, timid cat, telling you. So medically, 9-12 months, my knees were fine. Mentally, I was thinking, if I step here, if I do this, knowing, both ACLs, my left and my right, they was as far away from me and you. So I danced. So my game was stepping and and being a loser, and I was just like a timid cat, and I were awful. So that year was a really, really tough year.
And a couple of sendings off to boot.
Yeah. So the first one, Matt King.
You dirty player, Richard Malloy.
No. Matt King, I think because he was so big, I've never been dirty. I think because he was so big, I wanted to whack him, but I think I'd got it completely wrong and knocked him spark out. He was snoring before he hit the floor. And I went in and went to say sorry, and his wife were there. And ironically, obviously, I ended up playing with King, and his wife were calling me on it, and I said, I'm really, really sorry. And I couldn't understand that. Second one, Jason Demetriou deserved it. I'm glad I got sent off for him, because the set before, it was a dirty play, Jason Demetriou. So Danny Brough kicked the ball, I got it, and Jason Demetriou tackled me, but it sort of gouged my face, but not a gouge like my eyes, but like he really dug his nails in my face. So silly sausage here. Next, so we've kicked the ball. Danny Brough kicked it again. I've got it, and I've run straight. Jason Demetriou and just elbowed him straight down. I'm like, I'd no explanation why. Don't know why I did it. Got sent off, and
you're the only player to be sent off twice in the 2008 Super League season. How many matches did he get for that then?
I think I got 3 for King, and maybe 1 or 2 for Demetriou, because I got sent off quite early. But I regret King as I don't regret Demetriou.
So the Wigan years are not your favourite, and you're saying you didn't cover yourself in glory, but you did at least tie the knot during that time with Sasha. Yeah.
No, so that was probably the highlight of the 2000 and of the time in Wigan, and Nobby was great. Gave me some time off for the honeymoon and stuff, and in 2nd of January 2009. So that was probably the highlight of the Wigan time. If you look back, it was a funny one really, because we had all intents and purposes of moving over and being part of the community, which in hindsight, mate, I should have done really. Travelling over with Stu Fielden and Carl Price, who were great mates to this day. it's not conducive to performance. You know, sat in like well, we both know how many times me and you chatted, mate, when we sat on the M62. So I should have moved over, but didn't. We were settled in Wetherby and travelled. So it didn't work out like that.
No, but Tony Smith then comes back on the horizon at Warrington, and this turns out to be a great move and some of the best rugby of your career.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, and it's funny how things work. So I was having a barbecue again. There's a common theme. I'd had a few beers at my brother-in-law, not alcoholic.
I can see the right up to this one. Mathers with alcohol issues,
yeah. No. We're having a barbecue. It was a red hot day, and we're having a couple of beers at my brother-in-law's, and we're having a barbecue. And Tony's rang, and I'm like I said to you before, mate. Tony's rang, and I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, heart palpitations, and I'm like, then answer it. So I left it. Rang again, and I thought, what's he ringing for? So I rang him, and he said, right. He said, we're getting rid of Martin Gleeson. Don't want him at the club anymore. He said, I can get you part of this transfer deal, but I need to know now. I said, get it done. Didn't talk a penny. He said, trust me on the financials. He said, I'm rushing you. He said, I'll get you back to what you want. Just trust me. If you want to come, I need to know now. I said, Tony, I'll walk there. Just get it done. Run back in. I just knew. From the moment I walked in, knowing Tony's ways, and the side were brilliant. You look at the side, but then got to give credit to the conditioner, Nigel Hamilshaw. He really spent loads of time with me, got me fit, strong. Tony knew my capabilities. I knew what he wanted from the players inside out, and bearing in mind they were struggling at the time, so I knew I could add to what he wanted to implement, and it was just like, I don't know, just somebody opening their arms and just saying, and just rescued me. And
if Leeds had not won a trophy in forever when he lifted them across the line in 2004, Warrington, very similar in 2009. So 9 and 10, those Challenge Cup wins, and I can't remember I've seen you play a better individual performance than the one at Wembley in 2010.
2010
against Leeds.
Yeah,
absolutely outstanding that day.
They were different. So both of them. 2009, we had it was a rough old run. Breezy managed to get a drop goal to beat Hull KR, and then we beat Wigan, which were bittersweet because obviously I'd just left, and it's the only time I've ever cried on a rugby field because I thought, just because of the torrid time I'd had, and it was every kid's dream. While I'd played in a Challenge Cup final, I'd never played at Wembley, and it's every kid's dream. Like it was at our age to play at Wembley. I knew I was going to Wembley and we'd beat Wigan, and then we got to Wembley that first year, and it was back, both times it was pretty much, certainly the 2010 one was pretty much sold out and wasn't far off 2009. And, it's funny, the emotions, because I remember watching it in 94, 95 with Ellery Hanley and Leeds and Wigan and Abide With Me, and I'm stood in the tunnel. But then I'm thinking of my mum, of all the things I'm stood in, and I've got a massive lump in my throat thinking, don't cry, about to walk out to play biggest. So Abide With Me is playing, I'm stood, all I can think about is my mum, massive lump in my throat. And you forgot to say, second fastest try in Wembley history.
I did. It's down here as well.
Yeah, so that was just surreal in 2009. So yeah, we managed to win convincingly, and then 2010 was funny because they're all my best mates, and playing against Leeds, but it's business is business, and I'd probably not been big. It was the best performance, not just by me, but by the team. 1-17, genuinely, like. And I mean this. And if you asked the winger, the full, the 9, the 6, whoever, everybody played to the maximum. It was like serene. When people say in that moment,
yeah,
it was serene.
Well, I mean, you'll remember if you made any mistakes. I can't. But if I was in the pub with my mates having this conversation and we talked about you, we'd be saying that game in 2010. it was everywhere. It was everywhere on the field. Every time it looked like a try were going to be scored, he was blocking the gap. Caught everything, linked well.
Yeah.
Just everything that you'd see in a top draw full back that day was just fantastic.
Yeah,
it hurt Leeds fans.
Yeah, and it was just, and I don't know. It's funny how things work, and I think it was just. I just knew my role. Probably at that time, I were at my peak, if you like, and my body was fully back to trusting myself. I knew, and it was, of all days to play your best ever game, it was that day. It was.
Is that the sort of ultimate for you? I mean, when you think back about your career, is it the time at Leeds when it was all starting to happen and you started winning trophies, or is it the Warrington period or something else?
Yeah, I think Leeds is special because it were all with your best mates and it was a club that I loved. Yeah, that'd be the outstanding memory because it was what we'd all, we used to get the bus when we were in the academy and we're all that skint. We'd all have to chip in and buy a saurine from Morrison's at Kirkstall and share it. So we'd all had them experiences together,
Yeah.
So, but then I think the Wembley ones at Warrington were equally as special selfishly, because I thought we were on the scrappy. After doing 2 ACLs, I'd proven to myself I'd got back to where I thought I would have been going and I should have been going. So I was sort of more proud selfishly that I'd managed. Well, one, I'd played at Wembley, but two, after being nearly on the scrap heap, especially after Wigan, my next move could have been out of the game. So.
And that was all about confidence, was it? Because you were full of confidence in 04, let's say, just to pick out a year. It's low as you could possibly get really in 08 going into 09.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're back up again. I mean, are you feeling like you're a better player 5-6 years on than you were back in that first grand final win? Have you improved as a player by then, or was it really you were the same player but you just had confidence restored?
Yeah, I was the same player. It was just the confidence in my body and my knees, and just having the time to reinstall the confidence to do the things that made me the player that I was when I came through, but also have the maturity and also the physical conditioning as well, because the game changed. People got a lot bigger and stronger and faster, and that enabled me to then look after my knees a lot better and do a lot more specific work. Whereas before it was, I won't say back of a fag packet, but it'd be, you'd run till you around the park till you were sick. That was the sports science. Whereas like in 2009 and 10, it was very much, that's when sports science came in, and, then that helped, with my physical conditioning with my knees and, and the medical advancements and stuff. So I was the same player. I would just probably rebuilt physically, if you like.
Can you compare the two? I mean, we're another decade on now, so things have changed. But can you compare the clubs, in terms of the whole infrastructure at the two places, the way that they treat the players going from young right through to the seniors, the whole makeup of the backroom team and all that sort of thing? Are there constants, if you like, between the successful teams that you played in at Leeds and the successful team that you played in at Warrington?
Chalk and cheese. I think, the constant thing with Leeds is they've had a consistent stream of academy players come through and stuck to that ethos. That works, that blueprint from when we showed that it worked. Whereas Warrington was completely different and is still different. And while I played with some unbelievable players, they were all bought and they were all on massive money, which, is it a good or a bad thing? Like some of the players that I played with at Warrington were absolute world-class players. But in terms of sustainability, and you look at not just players that have played for Leeds first team, but players that have come through the Leeds system who weren't quite good enough, or had the pass blocked by a Danny, a Rob, Chev, who've gone on to make unbelievable careers elsewhere, shows you what a strong importance they've put on that. And it probably, I got a bit frustrated this week about reading about the academies, cutting back on academies and stuff. And I just think it's disgusting. I think while clubs can have marquee players, there's a club that are paying 2 halfbacks over 700 grand at the minute, but the governing bodies and the powers that be are letting the lifeblood of the game go. It really, having benefited from being an academy player and following my dreams, I just think it's a really, really poor, ill-thought move.
That's where the money should be going if the future of the sport is to be safeguarded. We'll have more views of that nature from Richard Mathers in part 3 of this Sporting Lives episode 15 podcast. Great to hear from him once again. And next time around, well, yes, you'll finally get to hear the Castleford story right at the top of the piece. So do look out for episode 3. Do, of course, give us a follow as well on @SportingLives1. That is for Facebook, also for Twitter. Or you can get in touch on LinkedIn as well on Sporting Lives with Jonathan Doidge, or email jonathandoidge@hotmail.com for suggestions for future guests or any questions that you have about the podcast. Please do give us a subscribe on YouTube and also on Podbean and iTunes. I need those to be able to continue to produce this podcast. But thanks for your patronage on this one. And I look forward to seeing you again for part 3 of episode 15 with Richard Mathers.